So we're joined tonight on air by Tim Russ. Tim, how are you doing this evening?
Doing fine. How are you doing?
You know what? We're alive and kicking, which unfortunately is better than I can say for some people in the Middle East tonight. But, right? So, see, we got a laugh out of him. Excellent. Excellent. Tim, did you get a chance to watch the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony? Oh, we got a little bit of a breakdown.
Tim, are you there? Are you there, Tim?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Huh?
Okay, excellent. Where are you calling us from tonight? Are you down in California?
I'm in Los Angeles, yeah.
Oh, fun. He's on the left coast. You're with us then, I guess. So it's okay. It's okay. And if you listen to Ann Coulter, she doesn't believe that Washington is a state worth getting worried about should we get nuked by North Korea. So, yay for us. So, yeah, we've made, I don't know if you guys have heard it, but did you see that, Tim? Did you see her comment? She tweeted that out.
Do I have to see her comment? Do I have to listen to it? Do I have to see her face at all? You know, she's a virtual nobody when it comes to anything. I mean, you can go to a bar in any city and ask somebody their opinion, and it's about going to be the same caliber as what she's got going on.
See,
who cares?
And you know what I love about it? This is great, Tim, because you absolutely know exactly who Ann Coulter is, which is why you were able to just, lay that diatribe out there about her.
You kidding me? I've heard most of them, man, and who gave her the status to be able to say anything? I mean, you could pull anything out of your butt and say it, and just because it's on the bloody television, everybody thinks it's the cat's meow. I mean, come on, man, And most of it is just nonsense and garbage anyway. It's nonsense.
She's made a really good name for herself in saying stuff that's factually incorrect. And
yes, because we have a population just big enough to swallow it.
Okay, so let's for those of you out there
this may be my favorite interview ever, Tim. Just so you know.
So for those of you that are out there listening tonight, whether you're in Olympia, south almost to Portland, or north to Everett, you might recognize Tim's voice. Tim, you've been around a lot. Okay, and I know we wanted to bring you on because my buddy Raph says I'm gonna talk to Tim and see if we can get him to come on, because he says Tim is really, I mean, he knows his politics, and Raph says Tim's gonna come on air and he's just gonna bust your balls about Donald Trump, and I'm like I totally love that, and that's what's good. But when I was doing some research on you like to do a lot of comedy, don't you?
I've done comedy. Most of the comedy I've done has all been scripted comedy. Yeah. If it's a project that requires the character that's doing whatever it is. A lot of the times the comedy's dry, and I enjoy doing that kind of stuff. It works well for me. I don't do a lot of really big, crazy, wild stuff, and not big, broad comedy. Most of the stuff's pretty subtle and dry, but I've done a lot of it. Yeah.
Well, iCarly is iconic.
Yeah, and iCarly, that kind of stuff on there, the character's just slightly more animated, but ultimately still within that sort of realistic boundary, in terms of playing that type of character. He was the principal of the high school, and, most of the stuff that I did was pretty straight ahead, the circumstance was funny, and, whatever they had me saying was funny, but the type of comedy, for example, was still pretty straightforward. It's not anything super over the top.
Well, and one thing I'll say too, Tim, is that I was going over through IMDb and just kind of getting an idea of all the projects and stuff you've been on, and you've got a wide gamut, right? I mean, from Star Trek Voyager, and Paul brought up iCarly. Just in all seriousness, can you tell me where Sharknado 3 ranks in your? Can you tell me where Sharknado 3 ranks in the pantheon of your Hollywood career?
Well, Sharknado is straight up drama, dude. I wasn't playing for laughs. That was all straight up. Just simply the fact that, first of all, the show is even made. The second of all, that it was so popular that it was made 3 times. Because apparently there's a slice of the population likes that stuff.
Well,
and, they called me to go do it. And I know the casting director very well, and I owed him a favor. So heck yeah, I'll go do Sharknado.
Oh wow,
sure.
That is,
this will pad the old resume.
You know what? Yeah. I think, and one of the reasons why I thought it was so great to give you an opportunity to come on, especially when Raph said that you really enjoyed politics, is because I think that over the last year, we have seen a country that has really, on both sides of the aisle, and even the libertarian folks, become very galvanized and very vocal and very opinionated and emotional, right? All at the same time. And I don't think that's a really good combination. And one of the things that I think that we've seen a lot of is we've seen a lot of folks from Hollywood get even more vocal than usual. And they're always already vocal, right? And so one of the reasons I thought that was so compelling to have you come on and talk to us is because I think a lot of people got the impression, well, like you were talking about with Ann Coulter, well, they're actors. They should stick to acting. But the truth is, I feel very strongly about this. You kind of have an opinion, and for all intents and purposes, actors tend to be a little bit better schooled in the world, I think, than a lot of the rest of us who are kind of stuck at home working construction. You know, you get a chance to go out and see people and talk to people and shake hands, and you really get a more diverse group of people that you come into contact than, say, I do or Kevin here does. Would you? Is that a fair?
Yeah, to a certain extent, yes. Another thing is that the performing arts in general, theater, music, rock and roll, pop music, acting. Those are also creative types of careers. They deal in creating, and the creative sort of concept and the creative spirit of people, I think, tends to push them generally to the left. I mean, they tend to see things, they see the world in a very different perspective than somebody who's not in that kind of work. They do have to go through, it's a different lifestyle, it's a different way of living, and you are creating dialogue, you're creating performance art, you're creating music, you're creating an acting role and a character. In that creating process, people who are in that field, overall, the vast majority of us simply tend to sway into that side of the politic world that looks at things in a different light.
Sure.
Pitching in a positive, helping. Again, building, creating. It's a different lifestyle than, say, for example, I don't know, a cutthroat hedge fund manager. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just the mindset of looking at the world is different. We look at things in different colors, and those colors tend to sway us and our political beliefs to the left. And we break the mold. We're not in the average person in the country doesn't do this kind of work. It's only a relative handful of us that do, because we look at things and look at life a little differently. We're not going down the straight sort of more contemporary, like your parents want you to do.
Yes, right. Yeah, go get a good job with a good company and work your way up the corporate ladder,
security,
right?
Yes,
yeah.
Looking at security and whatever that position may be.
And I would like to point out that I don't listen, for somebody like yourself who's really you've climbed that ladder of success in Hollywood, and most right? What would you say? 90% of people who are they never get even a shot, right? Not even a shot, man. It's just the way that things are. And were you just in the right place at the right time? In point of fact, I was. In point of fact, I arrived in the city and started pursuing my career at a time when, obviously, the entertainment landscape was very different than it is now, and it is changing dramatically, even more so now than as we speak. I have watched it evolve to what it's become, and there were more opportunities for actors at that time. There were not as many cable stations. There was no internet, but there were a lot more scripted television shows. Most of the material that was being filmed was shot here in California, here in L.A. There wasn't a lot of runaway production when I started, so there was a lot more work here in the city. So consequently, the number of actors that were there around were probably relatively the same number. It's just that there was more projects. There were more projects filming here, and there were more opportunities. There was more work available, and at the time, the weekly salaries and fees were different than they are becoming now. So once you got into the wheel and got to rolling, then you were off and running, and I got here right at the right time. I want to say maybe if I waited another 10 or 15 years, I might have lost out on that. I gotcha. Kevin?
Let me ask this question, because about when did you get into Southern California to start pursuing this? 1981 I arrived, yeah. So, it took me till 1985 to get the ball rolling. So we're literally, 25 years or so past that starting point.
25.
81 to now?
Like 30.
30. Okay, yeah. Well, I went to public school. It's just blame the math.
Andy's a Democrat, so that.
But let me ask this question: how different is Hollywood now from then? Meaning, I almost feel like in the 80s and the 70s and maybe even into the 90s, we were looking for people that had talent, and now it almost feels like talent takes a back seat to
reality TV.
But talent takes a back seat to Q rating, and talent takes a back seat to how attractive they are, or how pretty their face is, or how great he looks without a shirt on.
How many Facebook hits they have? What their Twitter accounts look like? Yeah, sure, it's changed dramatically, and I do mean dramatically. Number one, the salaries and fees are actually becoming smaller. What they pay you for a guest star role on television shows now is being reduced to daily rates when it was before based on a weekly rate. Mm-hmm. So that, and therefore your principal salaries, fees for the actual work are less, and your residuals consequently are also less. So it's much harder now to actually make a living at this job working at it full time. It's almost impossible. It's becoming more of a hobby for some folks instead of something full time. That's one thing that's happened, and that's because the entertainment business has become corporate. It's all now corporate, and that includes films and television. Look at the billboards, guys.
It's like the news business.
Look at what do you keep seeing on the billboard? Remakes of everything, reboots of everything. Let's just do that 12 times, or let's just bring it back and do it again, because they don't want to even take a chance on coming up with anything new or original. They just want to make sure that whatever's in their library that they already own, they'll just redo it for some younger audience that hasn't seen it yet.
But Tim, will you do me a favor? If you find the people that are responsible for the Chips remix, would you please repeatedly punch them in the throat? Please. I mean, I love Chips growing up. That whole remake, it makes me nauseous.
They made a comedy out of it. They made a parody, but they have other stuff that they made that was just a direct remake, and they are not going to stop. This is corporate world. It's a corporate world. They only want to make. It's all about the bottom line at the end of the quarter. That's the whole country coming that way anyway. But for the entertainment business, it just seeps into that, and also runaway production because it's cheaper. They just like we outsource manufacturing jobs China, they outsource stuff to Canada because Canada pays 40% off the top.
Mm-hmm.
Production fee. Yep. So it's runaway production. Same thing is happening in that is because it is everything is owned. All the studios are owned by major corps and a corp above that. Whereas before they were all independent studios. Now it's no longer. So Pepsi is in charge of making, decisions about movies. And all the corporate, cogs in the wheels below them are only thinking about keeping their jobs.
Yeah.
So let's go to our library. What have we got we can redo? Let's do that again.
Spider-Man for the 42nd time. Yeah.
For the 42nd time. And the difference between Spider-Man, Superman, and Batman is that those are serials. Those are superhero serials. Those are just like comic books. Mm-hmm. That you can get away with redoing over and over because you can come up with new stories every time. You can come up with new villains all the time. The same formula, but those are serials. It's different when you have a one-off movie that does very well with a beginning, middle, and end, and that thing is over with. And then you're going to redo it again, not only 5 times, but you're going to bring it back and reboot it again, and it's the same story that we just told. So pretty soon they're going to remake stuff that hasn't even been filmed yet because they're just in a hurry. They're just in a hurry to do stuff that without coming up with anything new and original and different. That is how the old days used to be, because the producers came up from the bottom as writers and directors and actors. They came up from the bottom into the studio business. Now it's just MBAs. It's people who walk out of business school. They're 25, 26 years old. They get some code executive, whatever job over at the studios, and all they're doing is figuring out a way to make money based on what they already own in their library. They don't have to worry about paying another writer or license a public. It's all, they own it already.
Right, and at that age,
do it again.
At that age, you can hire them while they know it all. So
absolutely,
you're in good shape. And so I imagine that the way things are going in Hollywood is what has led you into clearly what has become political punditry for you. So
to some degree, most of what part of it is my age. I've been around since the 60s, man. I was around when the country was tearing itself apart during the Vietnam and civil rights riots and things like that were going on. This country was very much split at that time.
Yeah.
For God's sakes, it flipped the entire Democratic South to Republican because of what happened at the convention of '69. So, at the end of the day, this is as a progressive sort of thing. Watching the presidents take, that have come since that time, I've become more and more and more and more involved in it. Just watching the transition, watching what has happened. Go ahead.
Have you given some thought to maybe running for public office?
If people have asked me that before, the problem is, man, I'm not a politician. That's not what I do.
Sure.
I would rather hand that opportunity to somebody or ask somebody that's what they want to do. When I spend my time, working in the entertainment, that's what I do. Somebody else needs to take that torch and run with it,
Right.
and really, I'd be starting off at 60 as opposed to 25 or 30 when you've got the energy to really to go out and do this and see the world through fresh eyes and things like that. I'm way too jaded.
Well, and Tim, it's such a mess now too, right? I mean, nobody can run for office without totally being just massacred in the press, whether you're Republican or Democrat. You're massacred and torn apart in everything you've ever done, and you're the most unpatriotic, horrible human being in the world. And the way that they're compared, they almost look comparable to Hitler, when in reality, it's not even close.
Yeah, that's true. You are because of our social media, access to information, that information being able to be gotten and dispersed at the blink of an eye. From one end of the spectrum to the other, doesn't matter who you are, what you've done. Everything is public knowledge now. Every single thing.
Yeah, everything you've
and public knowledge.
And Tim, you just hit on a really good point. People have all of that information and knowledge at their fingertips, but it can also be doctored in an instant and then absorbed by some people who they're not going to vet it. I saw a headline on Facebook. It must be true.
Yeah, don't you know it? There is. I mean, here again, this is like even more of a step beyond this sort of knife-cut divide in the country that has been, perpetuated by, one side of the political spectrum against the other side, and it's just this complete divisive wedge that is so specific now. Again, comparing it to the civil rights and riots and the Vietnam War riots, that's nothing compared to what it is now. That's nothing compared to what it is. At least back at that time, the Congress, Democratic or Republican, still worked together to some degree to form and to legislate.
Right, and now
supposed to do.
Yes, that's right. And now both sides are literally so entrenched
with the rest of the country.
Yeah, they can't see the forest for the trees.
For the trees.
Yeah, and they don't want to literally sit down and just talk to their constituents. And
I'll tell you what. I have two things that would solve, and just two basic things that would turn the entire congressional circumstance around. Two things, and all you need to do is that. Since the Supreme Court, came down on Citizens United having corporations or people, my friend, I mean, that isn't dramatic, and radical, unbelievable decision coming from a high court like that. There's nothing in the original founders' Declaration of Independence or Constitution had anything that mentioned corporations. They part of the revolutionary. The zeal at the time was against corporations. It was against the East India Company.
Right.
So they had nothing to do with corps. But now we've given them power. My two suggestions are: number one, take every law that's done, from the Constitution to Bill of Rights to laws that are passed by Congress, et cetera, et cetera. All laws are regulated to a degree, right? They're regulated to a degree. Even the gun laws. I mean, I'm pretty sure the store owner is not going to sell a 3-year-old a gun. There's a law against buying a cigarette unless you're 18 years old. There's all the laws that are passed and the rights we have are regulated to some degree. We'll take the Citizens United, take that, and put a cap on how much money can be donated to any candidate at $100. Put it down, period. No corporation, no billionaire, no grandmother in Idaho cannot donate any more than $100.
Right. Well,
so you have Xerox or AT&T or whoever it might be. It's $100. No super PAC. It's just $100 for Xerox, and the employees, each one can put in $100, whatever candidate they want, and that includes the CEO. Period. Done. Finished. Now you've taken all of that money that is killing us out of the political spectrum. They can no longer depend on. Now the playing field is different. Half those guys would be gone by the end of the week. They would have left their jobs because they can't make a fortune.
Sure.
I do like the fact of getting rid of the lobbyists. Even Trump and Cruz mentioned it. I mean, get rid of the lobbyists.
Okay, so what you're saying is you're a Trump supporter on that. Okay, go ahead.
No.
Wow.
No.
Well, he said it.
I will only say, and I'm like Norman Goldman. I like that fellow. Look, I will give credit where credit is due any time, and I'm not the farthest thing from a Trump supporter, but he did say, and Cruz even said at one time, and I only mention it, they said it one time, that to get rid of the lobbyists on Capitol Hill, you have to get rid of the lobbyists, you have to take the money out of the politics.
Yeah.
And Bernie has always been saying that. That is absolutely true, because then the playing field is level, and grandma and the family of five and the single mother all now have a say-so. They have to service everyone equally. So take that out. And second of all, I would decree that a majority has to be 75%. You need a 75% majority for anything. I don't care if it's electing the dog catcher. 75%. That way, both sides have to agree on whatever that bill is and have to compromise. Otherwise, nobody gets anything.
But wouldn't
75%.
But wouldn't that lead to further gridlock? What we've seen.
No, because you can't pass as vehemently as they want to have this Supreme Court justice or that bill passed or this thing done, or they want to cut welfare. Well, they can't cut welfare because they've got to come up with something else that balances it out for the other party. It has to be. They have to draw in a percentage of the other party in order to get the bill passed, and vice versa.
Yeah, your point is that by setting a 75% threshold, you're forcing each party to work across the lines.
To sit down and work across the table.
Which is what we used to have.
Nobody gets anything.
We used to have that under Clinton and when Newt.
Yeah, well, they just used to do it. I mean, they used to work it out. And in fact, the LBJ, man, he used to go around, talking to everybody, trying to get them to pass this thing. And what can we do? Generally, politics is basically, what can I do for you? Well, what can you do for me?
It's the art of compromise.
I'll give you this, you give me that.
Right.
And so that everybody more or less has, a piece, gets something of what they want. And it's not a draconian, radical cut across the board. And all of those things, politically, in terms of getting laws passed and things like that, people have to understand it does take a long, long time. There are 300 and some odd million adults in this country. There didn't used to be, now there are, and that number is growing. And you can't get 10 people to agree on where to go to lunch, man. And you've got to get everybody more or less content or happy with what's happening. So that does take a while.
Hold on, Tim.
Yeah.
I take serious exception to that. Everybody here knows that when I'm barbecuing, they all come over for lunch.
Tim, and again, we're talking with Tim Russ. Tim, I don't know how much time you allotted for a couple radio yahoos in Washington State,
right. But I got some time.
Can you? We got to go to top of the hour news, which is like a 6-minute break. But can you stick around with us, and you can either clear the line and call right back, or you can stay on hold or whatever you want to do. But I think there's so much more for us to talk about. I'd like to keep you on a little bit longer. Do you mind?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Okay,
awesome.
So talk with Tim Russ again. We'll talk a little more about Hollywood. We'll get his thoughts on Trump, and we'll see how him and Paul fall out.
Oh, he's gonna rip on me. I'm
the
sure.
World's biggest Trump supporter, and Tim may not be. Stick around. This is the Outlaw Radio Network. You're listening to the Mega Talk
Radio Network.
Back after this.